Continue. So we're going to look at now America starts to close the door on immigration. So let's go ahead and talk. A mob stormed through the Italian neighborhood of West Frankfort in 1920. West Frankfort was a small town in Illinois. The crowd was frustrated by a mining strike and angered by bank robberies that Italian criminals were rumored to have committed, the mafia. Mobs beat up Italian immigrants and burned their homes for 3 days in West Frankfort. This attack reflected a surge of nativism or anti-immigrant feelings. So nativism means where you are anti-immigrants, right? You only care about the people who were born in the United States and are American. So nativism is going to peak in the United States around this time and around 1920, when Americans are going to kind of get sick of all of these immigrants that come between 1880 and 1920. So the United States has always been a nation of immigrants, as we know. Yet time and again, nativism has sparked actions and policies against newer arrivals. Nativism is sometimes rooted in economic competition, so competing over money and jobs. Other times, it could stem from ethnic, religious, and other differences. For example, Protestant nativists charged that Catholic immigrants were enemies of democracy in the 1830s. So this has been going on for a while. They feared that Catholics had more loyalty to the Pope in Rome, who was the head of the church, than to the United States government. So a lot of people are just having differences either because of culture, religion, language, things like that. The surge in immigration that began in the 1880s is going to fuel another rise in nativism, as we're seeing. And some native-born Americans blamed immigrants for everything. They blamed them for slums, which is like all of those like tenement, kind of like the hood, and crime, to hard times and competition for jobs. So they blame the immigrants for everything. So this is going to prompt many labor leaders to discriminate against non-whites. So a lot of these labor unions are now going to be like whites only. As we see in some of these pictures, these cartoons, here's that Chinese Exclusion Act where you have Uncle Sam of the United States, right, getting rid of the Chinese. And if you can see in his hand right here, he's holding laundry detergent. As we learned, a lot of Chinese immigrants opened up laundromats in the United States. All right, we've also learned about the quota, right, only letting a certain percent of people in. So here's all the immigrants from Europe trying to come to the United States through this funnel. And as you can see right here, we have a gate, 3%. Uncle Sam is only letting in a certain number, right? Only 3%. And then right here, the great fear of the period, right? That Uncle Sam may be swallowed by foreigners, right? You see, like, you have like a Chinese guy here swallowing Uncle Sam. We have a guys like a leprechaun, like the Irish. So again, this was again that fear, that nativism, that people are showing anti-immigrant feeling. Kind of like what we saw in 2016 during the 2016 election. All right, so politicians are going to respond to the growing prejudice against immigrants. So Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, as we learned in 1882, and this is going to ban immigration by Chinese labor. So Chinese people are no longer allowed to come to the United States as of 1882. Japanese immigrants were also denied entry to the United States in 1907. They're going to pass a law, no more Japanese allowed. Congress required immigrants to prove that they could read and write in at least one language before they were allowed to enter the United States in 1917. I know this is what my great-grandfather had to do when he came over in 1914, or in 1915. Congress established a quota system in 1921, as we saw in that picture that I showed you, where they're only letting in a certain number of immigrants. So they're going to start this in 1921, and they're going to refine it in 1924 to even further limit immigration. So by 1927, only 150,000 immigrants were allowed to enter the United States annually. That's the quota number. That was it. People from East Asia were completely excluded. They left them out. Quotas limited immigration from any one country to 2% of the number of people from that country who lived in the United States in 1890. So most Eastern and Southern Europeans actually arrived later that year, like after 1890. So most of the quota space were reversed for immigrants from England, Ireland, and Germany as a result of this. All right, the new laws did not restrict Mexican immigration, though, because Mexicans um, uh, did not have to worry about filling up the quota because largely it was because the Mexicans were willing to work for less money. So America was okay with that, and it was like, no, okay, we won't let the Chinese in or the Japanese, but we're gonna let the Mexicans in because they're willing to work hard for very little money. And they had more in common with Americans than, let's say, the Japanese or Chinese did culturally. A lot of them shared the same religion. All right, but now Mexicans needed passports and visas to enter the United States. Visas allow people from other nations to enter and stay in the United States for a limited period of time, whether that's a couple months, a year, 2 years. So now, as of like in the mid 1920s, the United States is now closing its doors for the first time to other people, right? So America's always been a country of immigrants, but by the end of the 1920s, America is like, nope, we're done. We have way too many people coming in. We need to put an end to this, and they would, and they do. All right, y'all are about to time to climb. Hope you enjoy.